The Cubans have a name for the devastation which has befallen their country. They have a name for the poverty and despair, the rationing, and the blackouts. El Periodo Especial, the special period. The blackouts are routine, the darkness so common, they no longer have the power to disrupt. Cubans endure in the struggle and the quest to accomplish much with little, always waiting for the lights to come back on. Once before, Javier Sotomayor brought the light. When Cuba hosted the '91 Pan American Games, the only man to high jump 8 feet carried the torch, revered as a hero of the revolution, a job which has its perks. Sotomayor is aware of the contrast. The average Cuban makes $30 a week, $1,500 a year. He earns 10 times that in a single track meet.
At the beginning, it's not that I felt bad. I just felt a bit strange.
Havana is a city of 2 million people, and because gas costs $3.75 a gallon, it's a city of 1 million bikes. Sotomayor drives the Mercedes he won at the 1993 World Championships. Sticker price, $35,000.
I still feel the revolution, but money is always something you need.
As Cuba creaks toward the millennium, alone and vulnerable, an anachronism, Javier Sotomayor is living large. Sotomayor is a product of the system, the Cuban sports machine. From the sports schools to the high-yield performance centers, from the kids to the world champions, Cuba marries sports and society as well as any nation on earth.
Sport is the outcome of the revolution. It is the outcome of socialism. Without socialism, sport will have never developed.
But when the Soviet Union crumbled, Cuba lost 90% of its aid and ended up trapped amongst the rubble of a fallen empire. The anguish of El Periodo Especial engulfed the nation, turning Havana into a city of shadows and Cuba into a country of darkness. After 3 decades of swearing socialism or death, Cuba found some middle ground. A bit of capitalism has come to Cuba, and like the society it mirrors, the sports machine also shifted gears from propaganda to profit. Ordered to finance itself, it began exporting one of Cuba's prized natural resources.
Adidas Sotomayor, scene 17, take 1.
Its athletes. It's a neat double, being a symbol of socialist zeal and a growth industry, but Javier Sotomayor now competes for the glory of Fidel, the revolution, and Larios, makers of fine Spanish gin. Sotomayor makes 5 figures in appearance fees, 6 figures in prize money, and thousands more in endorsements. 70% goes toward keeping the sports machine well-oiled. 30 cents on the dollar is his.
We try to balance needs and abilities. Some people have needs that must be taken care of, but payment ought to be given according to one's abilities.
When Sotomayor won his Mercedes at the World Championships, the government planned to sell it and buy a bus. But Cuba's first red Mercedes so excited the country, Sotomayor was allowed to keep the car.
Everybody's really happy for everything I have. Nobody has ever criticized me for having a nice car or living in a nice house. On the contrary, they celebrated it.
In the darkness of El Periodo Especial, morning light is precious. Night drifts into day, and Cuba's past jockeys with its possible tomorrow. The old icons are still present, or at least still visible. But Cuba also looks toward new heroes, like a high jumper named Javier Sotomayor, to help turn the lights back on.
The Mercedes mentioned in the story, incidentally, may have saved Sotomayor's life. When he was recently involved in an accident, the Mercedes airbag cushioned Sotomayor from the blow. Again, you'll see Sotomayor tonight in the high jump final.